She was 12 years old when she decided, with the terrifying certainty only the young can possess, that she would rather be brilliant than happy. The world had not yet learned her name, but Susan Sontag already sensed that ordinary life would never be enough. Books would become her oxygen, ideas her battlefield, and language her sharpest weapon. Long before she became the most recognizable public intellectual in America, long before her essays unsettled museums, governments, and dinner tables alike, she was a child sitting alone with a book, convinced that intensity was a moral obligation. This is the story of that intensity, how it formed, how it burned, and how it reshaped American intellectual life for more than 4 decades. Susan Lee Sontag was born on January 16, 1933, in New York City, during a period when America itself was redefining what it meant to survive. The Great Depression still lingered like a shadow, and uncertainty was woven into daily existence. Her parents, Mildred Jacobson and Jack Rosenblatt, were Jewish Americans whose lives reflected the restless mobility of mid-century America. Jack was involved in the fur trade, a business that pulled the family across continents. Susan's earliest memories were not of stability, but of movement. China, Arizona, California, each place adding a layer to her developing sense that identity was something constructed, not inherited whole. When Susan was 5 years old, her father died of tuberculosis in China. His absence became one of the defining emotional facts of her life. The loss was not only personal, but symbolic, a sudden confrontation with mortality that would echo through her later writing on illness, death, and the body. Mildred returned to the United States with her 2 daughters, Susan and Judith, eventually settling in Los Angeles. Susan would later describe her mother as emotionally distant, fragile, and constrained by social expectations, a woman who drank too much and spoke too little about what truly mattered. From this emotional distance, Susan learned self-reliance, but also developed a hunger for absolute understanding. Los Angeles in the 1940s was a city of surfaces, sunlight, movies, optimism, and Susan felt alien within it. While other children absorbed popular culture uncritically, she devoured books with ferocity. By the time she was 10, she was reading Thomas Mann, Kafka, and Dostoevsky. At 12, she encountered Mann's The Magic Mountain, a novel obsessed with time, sickness, and intellectual seriousness. It stunned her. The book did not merely entertain her, it reorganized her inner life. She later said that reading it felt like discovering a secret society she had been waiting to join. School could not contain her appetite. She skipped grades and graduated from North Hollywood High School at 15. Already, she was known for her intimidating intelligence and emotional intensity. She was not simply smart, she demanded meaning from everything. This trait would become both her greatest strength and her greatest burden. At 16, Susan entered the University of California, Berkeley. She studied philosophy, literature, and history with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for monastic devotion. Berkeley in the late 1940s was intellectually vibrant, and Sontag absorbed its energy greedily. Yet even there, she felt impatient. Knowledge was never enough. She wanted synthesis, totality, a way of thinking that could account for art, politics, psychology, and ethics at once. At 17, she transferred to the University of Chicago, a place famous for its great books curriculum and uncompromising intellectual rigor. Chicago was not merely a university, it was an intellectual proving ground. Here, Sontag encountered thinkers who would permanently shape her mind. Aristotle, Plato, Hegel, Freud, Marx. She also encountered something else, peers who matched her intensity. For the first time, she was not alone in her seriousness. It was at Chicago that Susan met sociologist Philip Rieff,
a man more than a decade her senior. Brilliant, charismatic, and intellectually commanding, Reef recognized her exceptional mind immediately. Their relationship moved with startling speed. Susan was 17, Philip was 28. They married in 1950 when she was just 17 years old. The marriage would later be described by Sontag as a mistake made in the name of intellectual apprenticeship. She admired Reef deeply and learned enormously from him, but the relationship also constrained her. She was still discovering who she was, and marriage, particularly marriage in mid-century America, came with expectations she would ultimately reject. In 1952, she gave birth to her only child, David Reef. Motherhood did not soften her ambition, nor did it displace her intellectual hunger. If anything, it sharpened her sense that time was finite and must be used fiercely. Susan read while caring for an infant, wrote while exhausted, and refused to accept the idea that domestic life should define her identity. Her academic journey continued with graduate studies at Harvard University, where she studied philosophy under some of the most influential thinkers of the era. She immersed herself in continental philosophy, Kant, Nietzsche, Heidegger, while also engaging deeply with modern literature. Harvard was rigorous, but Susan was already thinking beyond academia. She did not merely want to interpret texts, she wanted to intervene in culture. A pivotal moment came when she received a fellowship to study at Oxford and later in Paris. Europe transformed her. In Paris, she encountered existentialism firsthand, not as a theory, but as a lived intellectual culture. She attended lectures by Roland Barthes, absorbed the ideas of Sartre and Camus, and experienced a society where writers and philosophers were public figures. This vision of the intellectual as a cultural force would profoundly influence her future path in America. Paris also marked a turning point in her personal life. She began to openly explore her sexuality, forming relationships with women that were both emotional and intellectual intense. While she rarely labeled herself publicly, these relationships were central to her life. They deepened her understanding of desire, identity, and the politics of visibility, issues that would later surface in her writing, often indirectly but powerfully. By the late 1950s, Susan Sontag returned to the United States changed. She was no longer content to be a scholar's wife or a graduate student buried in footnotes. She divorced Philip Reef in 1958 and began building an independent intellectual life. It was a risky decision in an era when women, especially mothers, were expected to choose stability over ambition. Sontag chose risk. She began teaching, writing, and slowly publishing essays. Her early work was ambitious, sometimes uneven, but unmistakably original. She was not interested in academic specialization. She wrote about film, literature, philosophy, and popular culture with equal seriousness. She refused the hierarchy that separated high art from low culture.
This refusal would soon make her famous. In 1964, Susan Sontag published the essay that changed everything, Notes on Camp. Appearing in Partisan Review, the essay was unlike anything American readers had seen. It treated camp, irony, exaggeration, stylization, as a serious aesthetic sensibility. It spoke fluently about opera, Hollywood, pop culture, and queer subtext without apology. The essay did not merely describe a phenomenon, it named it, legitimized it, and gave readers a new way to see the world. Overnight, Susan Sontag became a public intellectual. Susan Sontag's sudden prominence after Notes on Camp altered not only her career, but the shape of American intellectual life. She was photographed, debated, quoted, and often resented. Beauty and intellect in a woman were still considered an unstable combination in the 1960s, and Sontag possessed both. Critics accused her of elitism, obscurity, and arrogance, yet readers sensed that something essential was happening in her work,
A serious mind was taking popular culture seriously without condescension. In 1966, she published Against Interpretation, a collection of essays that would cement her reputation. The book was a manifesto disguised as criticism. Sontag argued that modern culture suffered from an excess of interpretation, an obsession with decoding meaning that suffocated the sensual, immediate experience of art. What art needed, she famously declared, was an erotics of art, not more hermeneutics. The phrase alone became legendary. With it, she challenged generations of critics and academics, positioning herself not against thinking, but against a mode of thinking that reduced art to a message. It ranged widely: Kafka, Godard, Beckett, science fiction, pornography, and avant-garde film. No boundaries held. For American readers, this breadth was electrifying. Sontag was modeling a new kind of intellectual freedom, one that refused specialization and insisted that ideas mattered everywhere. At the same time, the United States was entering one of its most turbulent periods. The Vietnam War escalated, the civil rights movement transformed public life, and generational rebellion erupted across campuses. Sontag did not retreat into theory. She entered the political arena with intensity equal to her aesthetic commitments. She traveled to Hanoi in 1968, a controversial act that drew fierce criticism at home. To some, she was a traitor; to others, a courageous truth seeker. Sontag believed that intellectuals had a moral obligation to witness power directly. Her essays from this period reveal a growing concern with violence, ideology, and the ways language disguises brutality. Her politics were never simple. She rejected dogma even when she sympathized with revolutionary causes. She criticized American imperialism while also condemning the romanticization of totalitarian regimes. This refusal to belong fully to any camp, political or cultural, made her a difficult figure, but also an honest one. In 1977, Susan Sontag faced the most personal crisis of her life. She was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. The experience shattered any remaining illusions she held about the neutrality of language. During her illness, she became acutely aware of the metaphors that surrounded cancer, images of invasion, punishment, moral failure. These metaphors, she realized, did not merely describe illness, they stigmatized it. Out of this realization came Illness as Metaphor, 1978, one of her most influential books. Written with clarity, urgency, and restrained anger, it argued that disease should be freed from metaphorical meaning. Illness was not a moral verdict or a spiritual test, it was a biological condition. The book resonated deeply with patients, doctors, and readers who had long sensed that cultural narratives about illness caused unnecessary suffering. Sontag survived cancer, though the fear of recurrence never left her. Survival intensified her seriousness. She worked harder, traveled more, and wrote with sharpened precision. Death, once an abstraction, had become an intimate presence. During the 1980s, Sontag continued to expand her range. She wrote novels such as The Volcano Lover and Death Kit, experimented with theater, and directed films in Europe. Though her fiction received mixed reviews, it revealed her persistent desire to explore consciousness from the inside, not only analyze it from above. She also became one of the most eloquent voices on photography. On Photography, 1977, examined how images shape reality, memory, and moral response. Sontag argued that photographs both document and anesthetize suffering, creating a distance between viewer and subject. Decades later, in an image-saturated digital world, the book would feel prophetic. In the 1990s, while many intellectuals retreated into commentary, Sontag moved toward action. During the siege of Sarajevo in the Bosnian War, she traveled repeatedly to the city under bombardment. There, she directed a production of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot with local actors. The gesture was symbolic and defiant, art as resistance, culture as survival. Her presence in Sarajevo was not performative. She lived with the people, endured the danger, and insisted that attention itself was a form of solidarity. For this, she was honored by the city, which named her after her lifetime. In her later years, Sontag reflected more openly on morality, memory, and responsibility. Regarding the Pain of Others, 2003, revisited her earlier ideas on photography, refining them in light of new wars and media technologies. She questioned whether repeated exposure to images of suffering produced compassion or indifference, and whether spectators could ever be innocent. Her final battle with illness came in the early 2000s, when she was diagnosed with leukemia following earlier cancers. Even then, she continued to read, think, and argue. She believed fiercely in the will to live, once declaring that she intended to defeat death through sheer intellectual defiance. Susan Sontag died on December 28, 2004, in New York City. She was 71 years old. Her son, David Reef, would later write movingly about her final months, portraying a woman who never relinquished her intensity, even in the face of mortality. Sontag left behind no single doctrine, no school of followers, no easy legacy. What she left instead was an example, the life of a mind unwilling to accept simplification. She believed that thinking was an ethical act, that attention was a moral skill, and that complexity was not an excuse, but a responsibility. For American audiences, Susan Sontag remains a defining figure, a woman who made ideas glamorous without making them shallow, who insisted that art and politics were inseparable, and who lived as if thought itself were a form of courage. Her life was not a straight line, but a flame, restless, consuming, illuminating. And long after her voice fell silent, the questions she asked continue to burn.